I am super excited. I'm doing two things at once right now because I'm trying to make sure I don't have any audio. There we go. Hi, guys. I hope you guys are so excited. I have Rob Coscia on. It's going to be so much fun. We are going to talk about his newest book, which is called Wonderful. It's a devotional. But have you guys ever felt like, I'm going through all these things and I'm trying to figure things out. And it's like, I don't know. You feel like you're kind of dragging. I don't know. We were kind of talking off air and we were kind of feeling like this might be the season. So I really believe that tonight's show is really going to help you to see things from a different perspective. I think when we can start to see that, that God is like really fighting for us and that he really is moving on our behalf, because sometimes we don't see everything and we can kind of get frustrated and we can start thinking, does this really matter? I was actually talking to Mama Karen and today, and if you guys have ever seen the movie Inside Out, and it's about all the emotions, and there was this one emotion, and she was blue. I'm trying to think if she was sadness. I think she might have been sadness, or she could have been fear. But anyway, there's a little picture of her where she's plopped, and it says plop, and that's kind of how I felt. I kind of felt today like I was plopped. It was just like one of those things. So we all have those days, but it's how do we pick ourselves up? How do we start to get our mojo back in gear? How do we start to see things from that different perspective? One of the things that I love about Rob is that he has such a heart of David. And so I always think about, like, in the book where it talks about Ziklag, when David, he went to Ziklag and his family was gone and everything was stolen, all their possessions, and all of the army were looking at David. They wanted to basically kill him. But David, it says in the word, but David reminded himself. He reminded himself, or it says actually he strengthened himself. And so when you strengthen yourself, what you're doing is you're reminding yourself of the victories that you've had because God has fought for you, that he was with you during this time and he was with you during this time. And it's in those places that you start to get refreshed. And it says that after he was strengthened, it was then he sought the Lord, because then there was no doubt. He had no doubt, all that fear, all that stuff left him. And so he was able to fully go to the Lord and say, what should I do? And that's exactly what I believe that Rob is going to do today. He's going to give you guys just a little bit of a jolt. Think about it as like getting those drinks that you can get that give you extra energy. And so so what we're going to do is I'm going to bring on Rob. Hello, Rob. Welcome to Touched by Prayer. I am so excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
And what's so funny is the last time that you were here, or that we spoke, we didn't have video. So now we can see each other.
Great. I'm coming to you from my mobile studio. I hope you.
That's it.
Yeah.
But what do you have in your mobile studio? What is the most important thing that you have in your mobile studio? You have your coffee, because coffee is so important.
Yes,
Mucho importante.
I'm outside one of my offices. It's one of the best coffee places here in Santa Rosa. So I'm all tanked up and ready to go.
Woohoo! It's going to be so much fun. Okay, so you have written, actually, he's written a couple of books. One of my favorites, and that's what we talked about the last time you were on Touched by Prayer, which was, I think, 2 years ago? Or could it possibly, was it 2 years ago or was it 3?
Time's weird. And I think it was either last week or 3 years ago.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. So, But the book that was so powerful and where you and I kind of connected was 40 Doors, Overcoming Fear, Hopelessness, and a Big Ugly Tumor. So there you go. Because you are a cancer survivor. In fact, you are a cancer kick butter. Can we say that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a different word. So
Well, see, I'm trying to keep things. I'm trying to keep things good. Okay, so that was such a great interview, because you were so raw and real about it, and I really still believe that God is still dealing with. I still think that book is still has hasn't even hit the potential of what it should. I really believe that book should be in every single chemotherapy place, every single place, every place that has chemo. I think it should be like right next to all the places where you get your ports. I'm just saying. So, but because I really believe that there's such inspiration when you see somebody who has gone through and came out the other side, and they came through with such understanding, wisdom, encouragement, and love. I think that that's a book that, regardless of where you are spiritually, I think that you can pull, nuggets out of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And the other two are companions. They kind of go together. At some point, I'll do a 365 calendar out of all three of them.
There you go.
Yeah, but for now, they all still revolve around the same theme of Daddy saying, "I'm here. We can do this." And it was in my car, just like this, that kind of inspired this book, Wonderful, Full.
Which I love, by the way.
Thank you. He gave that to me in the car, actually. Yeah. I was, and the introduction talks about this, but it was one of the most profound moments of my life. Because you and I know, we've lived long enough to see things not go so well. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean cancer. I mean just like relationship stuff, and you're battling through stuff with your kids, trying to help, and you feel helpless at times. Stuff with your professional life, stuff with who am I? What am I doing here? What's my place? This feels pointless. And then, physically, it may not be cancer, but even just, some people start to get seasonal affective disorder right now through, March. And it's a big deal. And it's keeping, who am I during all this, and what am I supposed to be doing? So I'm in my car outside the cancer center. I just gone through my second round, and the hair was now beginning to come out, and that's where it gets really real. And the chemo treatments were kind of radical. It was, we talked about this last time, but it was 100 hours at a time. It's all week long, and then they give you the final stuff at the cancer center. And so I'm walking across the parking lot, and it's freezing cold, super windy, and you just have one of those moments where you just feel lost. And I didn't put this in the book, and I probably should have. And it's the cool thing about Amazon, you can change it if you want to, but I'll tell you here. When I got back in the car, and the weight of everything just kind of crushed down on me. And it wasn't just physical, it was, I have nothing left emotionally. I have nothing left. I don't know how to battle this spiritually. I've been a pastor for 20 years, more than that, and I had nothing to bring to this that was like, okay, here's what I do, here's what you do, here's the 10 steps to freedom. It was, I am done, and I am exhausted. And I suddenly had this memory of being 6 years old, and first grade, and a blizzard hit unexpectedly, back before they had really great, weather stuff. And so it was a lot worse than they thought. And so they were trying to send us home early. And I ended up being like the last bus. We were the very last ones out of the school. I remember sitting in my coat, and the whole building's dark, and there's like one adult waiting for the bus, and it's snowing like crazy. And I am one of the last ones off the bus, and I walk home alone from the bus stop about a quarter mile. Sounds like one of those, when I was a kid, but it was true. And it was dark, completely dark by then. And, you're a little kid. I was little. And so the snow was like up to my knees already. And I'm trying to trudge through this stuff. And I'm remembering this as I sit down in the car. And I feel like I'm that kid again. I feel helpless and unable to move. And I was completely tired. And I remember calling out to God at 6 years old, because a quarter mile is nothing now. But then in the dark and the wind and the snow, it was scary. And suddenly I flew up into the air. And I started moving really fast. And my mom couldn't leave my younger siblings, but she sent the giant next door neighbor to come and get me and put me up in his shoulders and carried me home, actually ran with me home and got me home in seconds. And this feeling of, oh, I'm okay. And as I'm sitting outside the cancer center, I remembered that. And I had one of the most wonderful physical experiences I've ever had in my life, that I felt him physically, and I could hear it physically kiss me on top of the head. And it wasn't okay, your cancer's gone. It wasn't that. It wasn't like, okay, everything's just totally better. It was, I love you and I'm here. And it's been a reset button for me forever. And it didn't answer all my questions. And that's kind of the book. I'm okay with not knowing all the answers. I'm okay with living in wonder. If I'm full of that, I know he can kiss me on the head.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's funny because, as you felt the kiss when you feel that kiss, because I actually had the very first time I ever danced, I saw Jesus, and the first time I had an experience where I danced with Jesus, before we danced, he kissed me on my cheek, and I felt it. It was like, you can, like, and at first, I don't know if you felt this way, but it was like, oh, look at my imagination. I'm thinking that, I'm getting a kiss by God, and you can kind of blow it off. But what happened is somebody actually came over and told me that they saw in the spirit, they saw Jesus kiss me on the cheek. So they completely confirmed it. But when you see that, when you feel that, when you get that revelation of, I'm here and I love you and you're my son, just like a father would kiss a child on top of the head, there's a comfort in that. It's like, you haven't forgotten about me. You haven't left me. You haven't abandoned me. Because I'm sure that when you're going through those types of difficulties, especially the enemy, he likes to go in there and just, start, yapping it up and telling you, oh, where's your God now? But yet he reminded you of something, and then he sealed it with a kiss.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
Yeah.
So you wrote this book because, and I love the thing about wonderful, because there's a song by, isn't there a song called, Wonderful? Is it one? No, it's Wonder. Wait, I can't think of it. I just went, it's by John Mayer, because I keep hearing it in my head. It's a John Mayer song. And so every time I've been thinking about this interview, that song keeps coming into my head. And I don't know why, but because, God talks to me through songs. I'm going to have to look it up and see what it means, So, but what I loved about what you said is that, when God spoke to you and he said, I want you to have awe and wonder. And isn't that like where there's a scripture, and it says that we need to come to the Father with childlike faith, with childlike eyes, that we're supposed to. It's just like when we're children, if we have a good relationship with our parents, sometimes we can look at our parent with awe and wonder, like a child sometimes looks at their daddy and like, oh, look at what he's doing, And so I think that's kind of what I saw. So let's go back and let's start talking about like these devotionals that you've done. You have another one called Fishbowl Breakers, which is about your identity, and I think that what's so cool about these devotionals is, and you said this to me off air, you said that these are letters that were written to you from the Lord.
Yeah.
And that you just hope that somebody else can get something from it.
Absolutely. And I also want them to be doorways for people to have their own experiences with him. And my passion is that people would be able to hear him for themselves, that everyone would be able to hear him for themselves. It's so cool. It's the most amazing form of social media when you get the same word somebody else does and you're like, oh yes, I know that was God now. And there's a dozen other people getting that same thing, like, okay, here's the plan, here's what we're supposed to do. And we've forgotten that sometimes. We really get into our own plans, and it's hard not to, because life is difficult, it's just hard. at this stage of my life, you hear about friends who are really struggling with things physically or whatever, and stuff just happens. And even at this age, going, wow, I thought I dealt with that already, and it's stuff from when I was a kid. And it's not that you're stuck there, it's a layer that God wants to deal with now, because he's preparing you for what's next. So I pray that every devotional and every chapter is a doorway to doing that, to giving people permission, freedom, empowerment, encouragement to have those experiences with him, whether it's a kiss or whatever. I was back in before we moved to California here. It was just before a person came into the office just before I was going to close, like right before. And I'm an introvert. Okay, I like, I like sitting with my coffee and just chilling out, and so I was already done for the day. And this guy is emphatic and in my face, and he's stressed out to the max. And in that moment, I'm like, okay, I can either do the, do I say just push him off and do the pastorally thing and say make an appointment, or do I do this out of guilt and duty, or do I listen to you, Father? Okay, what are you saying? Where's the peace on this? Because this guy's not bringing peace. This guy is all over with anxiety and stress and worry. And so I just took a step back, and that's what I want to release people to do, because wherever you are, wherever there's chaos, you are still able to hear him in peace. That is your greatest, most wonderful thing you get to walk in every single day. That's what he left us. That's what we get to walk in and live in. And that's how I know when it's him. I know when there's peace on a word. It's not just what makes me feel good. No, because sometimes it's a hard thing. It's a difficult thing. Dealing with this guy was not going to be easy. But I knew it was okay because there was peace on it. So I took him inside, and it turns out this guy was like brilliant. I mean, like IQ off the scale kind of thing. And that's great, but he loved to like analyze stuff. And his whole thing was having a problem with miracles. Like he was trying to make sense of it. And it's really not something that you can always, 100% make sense of. It's easy to quantify our faith and doctrines and systematic theology, but when we start talking about a living relationship in which God does things that are beyond human ability, this guy was having a hard time making that leap. So we sat down, and all the lights were off because I was already, we were already ready to go, and all the air system was off and everything else. It was just quiet in the building. It was just him and me. And he said, why doesn't God do more? Why doesn't he just, do a wind like he did for Elijah? And I said, and I felt God's presence on that. I felt a wave of his peace. I felt a wave of his joy, and almost like there it is. And I want people to know you can hear that kind of thing all the time. And I said, would you like to? He said, like to what? Feel that. And Lisa, it was just the coolest thing. Because he was like, did the air conditioning just come in? I said, no, it's off, and the duct is above us. And I said, but he said, well, the air is coming from under the table. I said, I know, and it's going to start increasing. It blew like for 10 minutes harder and harder until our hair is moving.
Oh,
and he was
on.
like, how is this happening? How is this happening? I said, you asked him to show you how much he loves you. And he's in tears, and I never saw the guy again, but he had the breakthrough he was looking for, and I love that. I just love that.
That's so cool. And see, that's okay. So yesterday, and I did a little Facebook Live because I wanted to promote that you were going to be on the show today. And so I did a Facebook Live about lay it down. It's just lay it down. Lay down your burdens, lay down your stuff. And the reason that I was going to do it yesterday, it was funny, but what happened is that I actually wound up ministering to this woman at a gym that I was at, and I actually pulled off the burdens off of her. And one of the things that she said that was so beautiful, she said, I haven't felt that peace since the very first time I accepted the Lord.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
was like, there was just this, it came back. It was, and I said to her, just like you said, I said to her, you can have this anytime you want it.
Yeah.
I said, you have this inside of you.
Yep.
I said, all you have to do is just release it. So
Exactly.
it's not something that sometimes it is external, but most of it's internal. And if we
Yeah.
can kind of tap into that, and if we can understand
Yep.
that sense of peace, that the Prince of Peace lies within us,
Yep.
that the Spirit of the living God that carries peace, that there is no confusion, that there is no drama with the Lord, that we can sit in his peace
Yeah.
all the time, 24/7 if we want. I
Exactly.
mean, Paul did, right?
Exactly.
And so when you start to get that, but I really think that kind of goes with your book, The Fishbowl Breaker, because if it's talking about identity, and that's one of the most important things I feel, is that if you
Yeah.
don't know who you are
Yeah.
and you don't know whose you are, then you can't move.
No, absolutely agree. Fishbowl, they all kind of go together, the three books, and it is definitely something that is dear to me in the sense that I think about it constantly. That book came from a moment of intimacy and identity that just shaped um, like like a decade for me. I was actually in the shower, and this memory hit me from like I didn't even remember that this has happened, but I could see it almost as if it was a movie, or a movie, and um, there's like it just came flooding back. I was a little kid even before the snowstorm thing, and remember when we were kids, the little play school tool kit thing was made of wood back then. It wasn't plastic. Little hammer, little nail set, that kind of thing, and so I had my little hammer, and I kind of went over to the fish tank, and I just want to say hi to the fish. So I tapped on the glass, and it didn't take anything. I didn't hit it hard, but it just spiderwebbed immediately, and it exploded. And there were little golden fish flopping all the way down the stairs and going out the door, and it was just horrible. And I was mortified. I felt like I just destroyed the world. And my mom came running out, and she wasn't mad. She was just concerned I was okay. We tried to save as many little fishes as we could. But in this memory I'm having, I could see myself as a little kid, but I'm standing next to Jesus as an adult watching this, almost as if it's a holodeck from Star Trek. And he said, "What did you begin to believe about yourself that day?" And I thought about it, and I said, I believed that whatever I would touch, I was going to hurt. And he said, "No, I want you to see it from my perspective. I see what you're trying to do. You were just trying to say hello and to love them. And I release you from that judgment on yourself, because you are made to give life. You are my fishbowl breaker, and you will release people out of their fishbowls and into my river." You have that in your world, in your life, in your experience, in your history. God will take those moments and say, "This is who you are." I was just a couple miles away. We didn't live here yet. We were visiting Angie's parents one Thanksgiving, actually coming up, an anniversary of it. And this is one of the coolest miracles I've ever had. I actually did not put it in the book, so it's a freebie here. I was at this moment, Lisa, you and I were talking about this, about feeling, I feel like things are coming together. I know more about who I am. I know what I love. I know what I love to do. But I don't always know what to do with it, God. What direction? And it was one of those moments. I was at that kind of place too, saying, "What do I do with this? What am I created for? What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Look down." I mean, it was clear. It wasn't an audible voice, but it was one of those, like, I just know he said that. And I had been dimly aware. I was walking around an old basketball court, hadn't been used a long time. And the fence that used to be there, they had cut the chicken wire fence, they had cut that down. And it had been there so long that some of the brush had grown up as, like, grown around the chicken wire, so that it was like part of it. And so they actually had to cut the chicken wire to get those trees down. And so there's like a piece of like branch, like that thick around, about that long, with chicken wire running through it that had grown up around it. So it was part of it. It was stuck into it. It wasn't like loose. It was just like, it was like a lollipop of wood. And he said, "This is what I want you to do. I want you to hear me describe who people really are, and then do this." And Lisa, the wire came out of the log, just passed through it. I don't mean pulled out long ways like it was a hole. I mean passed out perpendicular to it, like nothing was there, like Jesus walking through a wall. And I'm just holding the two pieces for like 5 minutes, just stunned. And I knew that he was saying, this is what my people are going through. They have these things stuck through them, and I can't wait to take them out of them.
Oh, come on. That's a good word, man. That is a good word. You need to remove that wire. Seriously now. Yeah. There are some people, that wire is so deeply embedded. It's like, you know, it's almost like, wouldn't it be great if you could have like a magnet and just kind of just take it all out? You know what I mean? Just attach it and just be, there you go, you know. But and I get that, because I think that what God has really been kind of talking to me about, he says that we have been so conditioned to put blockages on ourselves that we do it. We do it pretty much on a daily basis. I mean, I work in clothing, and women come in and they quickly tell me like all their stuff, you know, how big their butt is or how they need to fix this and they have to cover that. And I don't look good in this and that's, and this one woman, this beautiful white sweater, and she loved it. She said she didn't want to take it off. She said, "Oh, but I'm going to ruin it." She goes, "I'm going to spill wine on it." And I said,
oh my goodness.
And then she goes, "Wait a second. I don't even drink wine." I'm like, "Oh, well, then there you go." But because of that false identity, those false things that maybe as a child she was clumsy, or maybe she dropped something and her parents put that into her, that she does not believe that she can actually maintain this beautiful sweater and keep it pristine, but that she's going to ruin it. And so she would not purchase it because she was afraid she would destroy it, but she didn't want to take it off. It was really kind of I was watching this and I was like, all right, there's something to this. But as soon as you just said what you said, that's when I was like, oh, duh. Okay. Because every time she said that, I said, no, don't say that about yourself. Yeah. Because like, even when, you know, I guess like whenever you deal with the public, people love, especially if you're in cosmetics or if you're a hairdresser or a nail person, people love to tell you their stuff. So when I worked in cosmetics, women would come and tell me their stuff. I'd become their friend and they would just tell me their stuff, but it was usually their bad stuff. It was never their good stuff. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that God is really trying to get us to understand, that he doesn't see us that way. Yeah. So we have to start seeing ourselves the way that he sees us.
Actually, I have a chapter in this directly about that, because I realized I was doing it myself, about being a bully. I'm nice to everybody else except for myself. Mm-hmm. And we do that constantly. And we are agreeing with those, you know, certainly we can really spiritualize and save the lives of the enemy. We know that's true, but it's the things we heard as kids, the things we agreed with, that we've grown up with, these limiting beliefs and lies that just are not true. So one of the things that's been helpful has been allowing God to go as deep as he wants to. And that's been hard. You know, you think like, oh, I have to appear a certain way. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor for 3 decades. I have to act a certain way, and I have to meet the expectations of And meanwhile, you are draining your wife, you're draining your kids, and you're draining yourself. Because you're not, as we talked about before the show started, you're not being authentic with who he's made you to be, and you're not being authentic with who he is. Mm-hmm. And so being honest about our struggles too, about, you know, this book is me working my stuff out. It's not me telling you, here's what you're supposed to do. It's me going, yes, I have a big scar on my arm from when I used to cut myself as a kid. And it's that that lie still comes back once in a while. And I don't mean to cut myself, but to feel like I feel so out of control that I know pain is the only thing I can do to bring myself under control. And immediately you now can go, okay, wait a second, God, I know that's not you. That is not you. So where are you in this? What's your truth? That's what we get to do. We get to bring ourselves to peace in him and see things from his perspectives.
That's so good. And you know what, Rob? I mean, all of this stuff, if you guys haven't followed Rob, you need to go find him on Facebook, because all of your writings, I mean, there are sometimes I read your writings, I'm like, oh, it's so good. So, like, you're just speaking to my soul. It's so good. Because you're so real. You're so authentic in the things that you're saying. You're saying the things that we don't want to say sometimes, because when you're trying to be transparent, there's a difference. Like some people, Tony Impson said it the best. She says, being transparent and being real is fantastic. Oh, look, you got light. And God said, let there be light. But Tony Impson said that, like, you want to be transparent, but you don't want to bleed on people.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So there's a difference. Like we can, sometimes we could share stuff where we have, and I feel that when we overcome something, we're able to speak from a place of getting through. But I think if we're still going through, I think that's the times that we need to be quiet. Absolutely. And especially like one of the things that you just said, being a pastor, you're supposed to be a certain way. And, if we've been watching Facebook, and there have been a lot of, I'm going to say this as, there have been a lot of pastors and people in ministry whose name has recently come up that their stuff is coming out. Yep. Because I'm just, like you said, God's saying, we're going to go through this stuff. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. Yeah. He's going through the stuff, man. Let me tell you something. He is pilfering through my closet and pilfering through my drawers. He's going through my stuff and he's pulling out anything that does not need to be there. He is cleaning house on my soul. That's what the Lord is doing right now. Because if he doesn't, this stuff is going to come back up. If he doesn't deal with it, I'm never going to be able to come from that place of victory in order to speak a truth about who he is and about what he really believes and what he believes about me. Right?
Yep. Exactly. Absolutely. I still think constantly about, Jack Frost's words a long time ago. And it wasn't even original to him, but he's the one I heard it from first, about intimacy being defined as into me you see, God, and allowing that with a person as well. So it's not just accountability. People will say, well, "Where's the accountability here?" It's not saying, "Did you screw up this week?" And are you managing your sin? It's about seeing people for who they are in him and blessing that and encouraging that and having the freedom to speak life into people and giving them the empowerment to overcome this stuff. We have not done that. We've been afraid to speak life, and we cannot be afraid to speak life. And so we rely on speaking judgment instead. I don't know how we got comfortable with that, but we're really good at it. And
that kind of goes back to because you and I were talking about Rick Joyner's book, The Final Quest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Jenny Wilcox gave it to me, who's watching today. So Jenny gave it to me. And what was so interesting is that there is a chapter in the very, very beginning where, because it was a vision that he had, and this was a vision that went on like for a while. Like he would leave his cabin. Rick Joyner would leave his cabin, go do some stuff, come back to the cabin and pick up right where he left off. So this was one of these visions. But one of the things that you and I were talking about was that there were people who were actually prisoners of war in the devil, like in the enemy's camp, so to speak, right? And they were called the hordes of evil, I think is or I think that's it. And so, but they were prisoners. And when people would fall, they would be stabbing the prisoners who fell because they felt it was God's judgment.
Right. Yeah.
That was the part that broke my heart the most. Because if we're sitting here, and that's why I said I wanted to be really careful how I said what I said about, because God wants to deal with our stuff, but he wants to do it privately. But some people will not listen. They're just not listening to him. And so unfortunately, what happens is it has to become public in order to get their attention. But it's always, if we always understand that God's purpose is always about love,
Yeah.
because he loves that person so much that he knows that if this doesn't get fixed, it's going to lead to something worse.
Yeah.
And so he wants to deal with it and wants to get it done with so that they can be healed, so that they can go further on. But people see it as if I admit that I do something wrong, or if I've done something wrong and I won't admit it, then nobody knows about it and I can just go about doing my thing. But you can't. And I've been hearing more and more of this stuff where people don't want to be dealing with their stuff. And dealing with your stuff is not fun, but it has to be dealt with.
It's not an option. No,
it's not an option. Come on now.
This has been a year of that for me too. And that's what I want people to get in the book too, to know that they are not alone in going through this stuff. And this is not we know this, we hear these words and we get almost numb to them about what condemnation versus conviction and all that kind of thing. And it goes beyond that. I don't know if there's a bigger word that encompasses the love of God to help you become whole and be all that he sees you as. And I've used that phrase a billion times. I've used the phrase, who do you want to be for me right now, God? And how do you see me? And I thought I was doing that well. And this past year was just this, I just kind of crashed. I don't mean morally. I mean like emotionally and mentally had a crash in the middle of trying to write this book even. And discovered that, I've been battling anxiety and depression off and on kind of through my life. And suddenly it just came in a wave that just took over. And I had to let him deal with it in ways that I'd never done before. Or I could be very stubborn and say no and force myself to act a certain way and put it down. But he was lovingly, he wasn't condemning me. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He wasn't trying to, whatever negative word you want to use there, synonym. It was an invitation to life. And it's been a long road this year. It really has. But I genuinely feel very different because I have let some people speak to some depths of my soul that I never have before. And we have to find those relationships. And it's not always easy. I know that some people will be out there saying, I have nobody. I'm blessing you to find someone who will speak into your life, and something like the book will help, and Lisa helps. But I'm praying for somebody to connect with a friend that you can speak into and will speak into you. I had this amazing dream that it's one of those things I do replay in my mind over and over again. There's two dreams that I think about constantly. And this one was, I may have even mentioned it before because it is so important to me. And I was with Jesus in this dream. It's a dream in which you're dreaming. It's that aware, that alive. Like, I was like, I am dreaming. Yes, this is not a vision. I am actually dreaming. And he said, yep. And we are standing in front of this woman who is covered in black tar. Oh. And the black tar has pieces of luggage all over it. And I look at Jesus, I kind of roll my eyes and go, okay, I get it. He goes, yep, that's her baggage. Now go talk her out of it. Oh boy. I want you to go counsel her out of all the baggage. Like, okay. And so I use everything I know, every school of deliverance and every thing I've learned from Bible college, seminary stuff, all the stuff I've read about, whatever. And she was agreeing with me, like, yep, that's where that came from. Yep. But she was just stuck. And I said, this isn't working. He said, now watch this. And the scene changes. And now she is standing over to the side. There are strings of the black tar going to her, to the pile. But now I see her as this fierce warrior in this amazing armor with medals and just this incredible, like, heavenly kind of stuff and weapons. And he said, now tell her what you see. I said, oh my gosh, you are made for this, and you have this on you, and this metal came from this and this. And wherever we came to a spot where there was tar stuck, I said, oh, this has been there, but God says this about it, and would just snap off. And I know somebody else may have a different perspective on, speaking this, but I know for me, he has said, this is what we're supposed to do for each other, to speak life. He said, you are made for this. This is who you are. This is how you
That's
are
right.
seen until it's real. And I mean, do that for yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not given ourselves permission to do that. I was struggling to write a chapter. I mean, really struggling. Like, it was my first thing I was ever going to have published. I've been invited to write a chapter for a compilation, and I was so stressed about it because I've always wanted to be a writer, and I couldn't fit what I wanted to say into the requisite amount of words. It turns out nobody stayed at the right words. I was the only one, but I was so stressed about that. Yeah, I couldn't fit these two paragraphs. I couldn't bridge them without blowing the word count, and I threw my laptop down on the bed and I was about to walk out, and I could feel God say to me, who are you? And I knew he was giving me a choice. It was a hard thing, and yet it was a loving daddy thing. And he was giving me a choice to see me as he did. And it was a choice. I could have said at that moment, I'm a failure. All these things that I've said since I was a kid, I can't do this. I am unable. What I have to say isn't good enough. And I knew what he was giving me, though. I knew the piece on the sentence, the only place was to say, I'm a writer. He says, then write. And I sat down and I was able to do as much as I possibly could, except for that space in between those two ideas. I said, do I get rid of this idea? He said, no. Do I get rid of this? No. And I said, okay, then I'm just going to, because it was due the next morning to be emailed in. And I put the laptop next to my head as I went to sleep. And I said, okay, I'll get up at 6 and you'll have to give me the wisdom to write and fill this in. And when I woke up that morning, it was done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he wrote it, and it's like, oh, duh, of course.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that is what we get to walk in. That's what we get to do.
I love that. I love that you say that. That's what we get to walk in. That's what we get to do. Yeah. It's an invitation. I love that. And it's a choice. It's always a choice.
It is. And that's what even the book is. It's a choice. Every chapter is a choice, and I don't always choose well. But I know this, if you look at your life and you'll have those moments where you're just off, but you recognize, like, you know what? Before, this would have taken me a long time to recover, and it's not now. And I can recover my peace in a matter of minutes or hours or days instead of, weeks or months. And even if you're struggling, chemically, that there is still a peace while you're going through it, and a freedom to know, okay, I don't feel well, but I can still receive your peace and deal with this, and walk through this with you. And that's the wonders about it. Means that sometimes I don't know. That's one of my favorite 3-word phrase I was not allowed to say for years and years. I would not allow myself to say, I don't know. I'm a pastor. I have to have the answers. But he finally said, you don't. You can say, I don't know, and that's okay. And there was such a freedom to say, I don't know, but you do, and I trust you, and I love you. And the reset, instead of being, I have to know everything, instead of having everything lined up, it was simply, I know you love me, and I can start over from there.
That's so good. See, that's the whole thing. Like I said, when we start to, when we lay down the stuff that we're struggling with, and we, I think that when we start to, just like that woman with the tar, and I, it's so funny about like I think about tar babies, and I think about like what that does, that tar, it's something that was put on to keep something attached that shouldn't be.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's really hard to get rid of tar. I mean, it's super. If you ever got tar on a good pair of shoes and you cried because you couldn't get it off. Yes, yeah. It's just horrific to try to get tar off. But what I really think is very cool is that as you were able to speak those words, those truths, it's almost like that tar became frozen. And as it got frozen, it was able to just break off.
Yeah.
Like it was just like frozen in time. So there was something that penetrated that took that power. It was almost like it just was like frozen. That's the only word I can just see. It just got frozen off.
It was really cool because it started this thought in me that I don't have to fix people. I am not responsible for fixing them.
Oh, come on.
I get to empower them to love them. I get to love people, and God does the rest. That took so long. It took 20 years to know that. It was way too long. I'm still learning that. Saturday, I have this unspoken. Lately, I've been having this unspoken kind of date with a homeless guy for coffee on Saturday mornings, and I don't have to fix this guy. I get to love him. I get to know about his life and speak life into him. I get to pray for him, and we've been developing a relationship. I don't have to fix everything. I simply get to love him, and we don't feel comfortable with that because we need to have answers. We need to have results. We need to have numbers. We need to have whatever. And the wonder part of it, having the fullness of that, means I let God be God, and I get to love people instead. I was in Home Depot and kind of running through it, and I passed this woman in one of the aisles. It's only the two of us there, and I suddenly got this flash of a truck. The lights are back on. Oh, there it is, the flash right there.
There's a truck.
And it gives me this. Actually, it is a truck in front of me right now. I hope it reverses. There you go. Literally. And I said, oh, it was such a vivid picture. I thought, is that you, God? And I stopped, and I walked past her again, and I got this flash again. I said, okay, so is there more? And I got crickets. Okay, fine. So I went over to her and said, Miss, I am so sorry to bother you. I know how weird this may be, but do you drive a truck? And I'll just say this. She doesn't look like the person who drove a truck. She just did not. And she said, yes, my husband and I drive over, over the highways for our living. I said, oh, thank you, God. And as she said that, I got a picture of a spine. And now I knew. I said, okay. And I said, I know, again, this is very strange, but are you having problems with your back? And she burst into tears. And she said, I was just praying this morning for God to send someone to me to pray for me because my back is hurting so badly.
Oh, come on. Seriously.
And she's from out of state. And it was just this moment of, blessing her, praying for her. And she felt fantastic. And I did too. But we get to do that. We don't have to fix everything. You just have to be listening. And I have to remember that for me too. We've been going through, this has been one of the hardest years we've had in a long time. And truly so hard that it's been draining. And yet at the same time, I have not felt this much peace and love in God's presence maybe my whole life.
That's so good.
And that's possible. And I've known that, but I've not known that. And I know there's people out there who know that maybe better than I do. But if you don't, you get to. I promise you get to.
That's so good. And that's when we start to understand that. I always think about the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission from God.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
God, right? And so you think about that, but their heart, their intention was truly good.
Absolutely.
They might have done it in a really crazy kind of way, but their intentions and their heart was just, God sent me on a mission to go and raise money for this orphanage, because that's what we're supposed to do. And regardless of what happens to us, we don't really care, but we're going to do this, and we're going to break some rules. And I think that God is putting, there's so much that's happening right now. There's so much that is going on in our world. I mean, that people are just, they're freaking out because God is doing things so differently that they don't know they just don't know how to deal with it. Like you can look at the Kanye thing, and you can look at some of the other things, and
I
Oh,
love it. I love it. And I,
I
I
do too.
love the Blues Brothers thing too. I love the message from God here. We're on a mission.
Come
We're ready
on.
to go.
Come on. I love that. Come on.
I love that he's shaking things up this way. You know, we've been hearing these words about this third great awakening, and I've been saying it for a couple of years now. It's not going to happen the way that people are expecting.
That's right.
How
Come on.
amazing would it be if it happened through Hollywood?
Come
How
on.
amazing would it be if it happens through the entertainment industry, from the mountain that nobody's and that everyone's been judging, from the mountain everyone's been criticizing, and this shakeup. I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to.
Okay.
If it's okay. Well, you don't know, whatever.
Of course it is.
You know, for whatever I know we can struggle over how to minister to people sometimes, because we've separated ourselves and said, well, this is okay and this isn't, and we've said that you know, if someone's in this lifestyle is not worthy of this, and someone's this and this and this, whatever. I'm just going to tell you that I had a dream, and it was something profound to me, and it's just not just about homosexuality, but it was about this idea of God is doing things differently than we've seen before. And I'm just going to relate the dream. And it was that, again, I'm dreaming that, and I know I'm dreaming, and it's one of those real ones. And this is the second dream that I think of all the time. And we're standing behind this building, and Jesus said, "This is a gay church." And even in the dream, I'm like, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" He said, "I want you to go inside and speak. They have no one." Like, okay. So I walk in, and he in the dream physically disappears, but I can hear him in my heart. And I walk into the room, and there's about 30 people in there, and they turn and look at me and go like this, because they don't trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and in my head, I'm talking to him saying, "So what do you want to do?" He says, "Go up front." And no one was up there. There was no one speaking. There was just a little low platform. And I get up there. I said, "Now what?" He says, "Just tell them what I show you." And in my head, I saw a broken bone that hadn't healed well from an injury when they were a kid, an issue with a parent that had not been healed emotionally, about 6 or 7 things that just appeared in my head, physical and emotional. And I said, "I would love the honor of praying with you if that applies to any of you." And even in my dream, it was this awkward, long silence until finally one person raised their hand, and I said, is it okay if I pray for you? And this person got healed. And people started to go, "Oh, cool." And they started praying for one another. And this revival broke out, and everybody started getting healed. And in my head, I said, "God, do you want me to talk about this or that now?" He said, "No, I want you to love them and let me deal with the rest."
Come on. All right. Yeah.
And that's not
Mm-hmm.
just that area or that subject. It's anything.
Anything.
Because we have made ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we've gone in the last couple of years. Oh, here we go. Do I say this enough? There are some of us that have been very blessed and equipped to go to the political mountain and make a really wonderful difference there, and
Yes.
do really good things and bring the presence of God. I love the people. I've been praying for Daniels and Josephs to get around the president, but not just Trump. I prayed for that around Obama too.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we all, many in the church go, "Okay, we're going to occupy this mountain and hold on to it," and they're doing it in a spirit that may not be what God had intended. But I don't know if that's going to come across, how that's going to come across. But I mean, we're doing it because
Well, it's going to come out. It's
afraid.
going to come out in truth. That's what it's going to come out in. So don't worry about it.
We're not doing it to bring love and grace and God's truth. We're there to bring our fear and our insecurities about stuff. And so God goes, "Okay, well, I meant this for you to bring life here, but if you can't do that, I'm going to have to bring it somewhere else." And so what if he's doing that with the entertainment mountain?
Mm-hmm.
What if he's doing that with the business mountain? There are people out there in business that are rising up that frankly, we've talked about the whole Q thing, but we're not always seeing that it's not just the political stuff there. There are people who are have been blessed by God financially that have his heart, that are
That's
trying
right.
to bring life, not just change, like, okay, now we control stuff. Who's we? The church is not supposed to control stuff. It's supposed to bless stuff. It's supposed to be an overwhelming blessing to the world, overwhelming life, and speaking life wherever we go, to the Pharaoh and to the kings that don't even know him yet. And so that's what we're supposed to be doing. So I love that things are coming through Kanye West and whomever, but we're going to see more of that, more and
Oh,
more and
heck yeah.
more.
Yep, I agree.
And so he's preparing us by saying, will you please be authentic with me? Will you let me speak into your life? Will you let me raise you up to speak life into yourself and to others? Will you let me speak life into, so that when I speak something to you and you hear it happen in the news, you'll know that was me. It's happening right now in China, in Iran. There are revivals happening like we've never seen before. And I don't want to miss that. And so if our part is to breathe life and speak life into those brothers and sisters who are suffering, then we've got to get off our butts and do that, and surrender our ways of doing things from the past. And I need to get over myself, the old self. I need to get over the tar and the luggage and get really comfortable with the new person that God sees me as, and really enjoy it and speak life from that place. That's what the book is. It's that. It's knowing I don't have to fix everything. I don't have to be everything to everyone, but I get to be his kid. I get to be his kid every day.
I love that. I
Does that
love
make
that.
sense?
And it totally makes sense. And, I think it's interesting because when I worked at the cosmetic counter, I was doing makeup for this woman who was in a homosexual lifestyle, and I started to talk to her, and somehow we talked about God, because he just always comes up in conversation, especially when I was at the cosmetic counter. It just constantly, would come up. And so I started to talk to her, and I was telling her about how I prayed for this young man who also was gay. And she looked at me and she said, "You prayed for him?" I said, "Absolutely. He asked me to." She's like, "Really?" Like, she was shocked. And I said, "I would pray for you too. Do you want me to pray for you?" She's like, "You would pray for me." I said, "Absolutely." And she didn't let me, but I think she was surprised, because there is something that the church, not the body. I'm going to say it this way, that the church has not done well. Because if you go back to one of the things about Bob Jones, who was a prophet, and if you don't know who Bob Jones is, find out who Bob Jones is, because he was a prophet and he had all these visions. But he died. And when he died, he went to heaven. And the first thing he was asked was, "Did you learn how to love?" And he couldn't answer it. So guess what? He got sent back. And guess when he died? When he actually did go home to be with the Lord, he died on Valentine's Day, because he learned how to love well. And one of the things that happened to me personally, I took my daughter. Well, my daughter actually surprised me, and she came to come and hear Sean Bowles. And Sean, and I was praying and praying and praying, "Please, please, please prophesy over my daughter Samantha." I was in the throne room yanking on his robe. "Give her a word," because she needed it. She so desperately needed to hear that God knew who she was, and she didn't want a generic word. And I was like, well, this from Sean Bowles, she will not get one. And one of the things that he said, and this hit me so hard. He said that he said to her, "You love well. You love so well." And I thought about that, and it hit me hard, because one of the things that I thought about was, goodness gracious, she doesn't read a Bible. She doesn't go to church. She doesn't pray in tongues, but she loves well. Yeah. She loves well. And I said, I need to love better. And that started to shift things for me. Yeah. That's when things started to change for me, because I thought, goodness gracious, as a daughter of the Most High King, I should love very well. Yeah. So that's my own personal agenda. I'm not putting it on anybody else. I'm not trying to judge anybody else, but I'm just saying this is what I got from it. And what you're saying is you have the same mandate.
Yeah.
Because if we can't love well, and we have to go back into 1 Corinthians where it talks about what love is. Love is patient. Hello. Okay. Love is kind.
Yeah.
Love is kind. It holds no record of wrong.
Yeah.
Seriously? Like, we are not doing love. We're doing a Hallmark card. That's what we're doing, but we're not doing love.
Yep.
Love does not boast, right? It's not jealous. Doesn't envy. Come on. If we go back and look at what love really is, are we doing love? Real love. And it endures. That's the one that got me, Rob. When the Lord started talking to me about things, and he said, Lisa, love endures all things. So when somebody talks smack about you, you still got to love them. When somebody does stuff, you still got to love them.
Yeah.
Because it endures.
Yeah.
That's what brings home the prodigals, is the love. Right?
Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that, but
I love it. No, I love it. It's such an important chapter. I've done over 100 weddings.
Uh-huh.
And, everyone wants the 1 Corinthians 13, but the reality of that is so deep. And we got so used to that chapter, we just kind of gloss over it. And it's like, yeah, that's just for ceremony. It is so deep. And Paul was just getting started. He's just dictating this going, and I could imagine this list in his head as he's, saying this, and somebody's trying to write it down and say, wait a second, what is happening? You're going too fast. And he started to describe love that he's experienced. You think about what he came from, the hate that he came from, the insecurity and the arrogance and the I know it all, to knowing nothing, and then spending 3 years in the desert just relearning love, relearning who God was, his essence, his nature, and his character. And he gets to this point of trying to write to the Corinthians who are really going through some stuff. And he just can't get enough superlatives to talk about this is what love is. And don't let it get twisted among you. This is what it is. And that's something we have to ask all the time. I was actually outside one day, and I was talking to God, and I frequently ask him this, who do you want to be for me right now? And I don't mean that in a weird sense, like, okay, he's different people. It's, what part of your character do you want to work on in me? And he said very clearly, my heart, love. I said, well, I already know that one. He said, no, this is deeper. And it's been a long one, but it's been a good one, a really, really good one. And it's one I can't control it. It's the coolest thing I've learned about this is that I don't have to manufacture it. I love, we talk about love. It always comes to me with Peter at the lake when Jesus is restoring him. They finally get he's resurrected. This is real. This is really happening. We have no idea what we're supposed to do. And he takes Peter aside. He restores him, and we've heard all the messages about that. Peter denied him 3 times, so Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" 3 times. But that's really not all that was going on there. And because in the Greek, you may have heard this too, but Jesus asked him twice, "Do you agape?" which is that highest form of heavenly God-inspired love. And Peter responds, "I love you as a brother." Like he couldn't bring himself to say, "I love you like you love me," and it was crushing to him. And what Jesus was trying to impart to him was saying, he says, just feed my sheep, be a pastor, be what I've seen in you, be all that I've spoken into you. What he was saying was the love will come from me and flow through you to them and come right back to me. You don't have to manufacture it. It doesn't have to come up. It's not your strength, Peter. It's mine through you. That's where the love comes from. That's why it never ends. That's why love never fails. It's his. That's why it never... faith, hope, and love go on. And it's not faith of doctrine, it's faithfulness that comes from him first. I can be faithful because he's faithful first.
Absolutely. And how many times have you prayed for someone, Rob, and all of a sudden you love them like as if they were your kid?
Yeah.
The first time that happened to me, I was like, that was weird. Yeah. I was like, wow, but this outpouring of love came through me to this complete and total stranger. But I looked at him with such love, and it's like
Yeah.
it's crazy. The very first time that God told me, he said, I want you to talk to this person. And it was, I'm just going to tell you, but Rob, Rob and I were at like social services because he wasn't working, I wasn't working, and we needed help to pay our bills. I mean, I'm just being real. It was just, and of course we got denied because I sat there and I was praying as he's looking for the court, or for the government to help us. I'm reading every single scripture that God is my provider, that I will not be homeless, that I will have money, we will have food. I'm reading every single scripture and I'm just there with him. And I even said to my husband, I said, I'm just here because I think that God has something in store. And he did. There was this homeless kid who was living in the he was living behind this woods in like this skater park. And so the Lord said, go and talk to him. And I'm like, well, okay, bring him over here. And the Lord, I heard him again. He said, go and sit. And so because somebody got up and there was a chair right next to this boy. And I said, yeah, but I'm with my husband. I said, I can't go because there's only one chair. And as soon as I said that, a second person right next to him got up. So now there's two. And I heard the Lord say, go to him. And I wouldn't do it because I didn't understand. This was really, really, really in the beginning. This is really, really in the beginning. And then two other people came and sat down. And so as we were walking out, I said to my husband, I said, Rob, I said, it was that boy that we heard, because I could hear, I was crying for him. And people probably thought I was crying about my own situation, but I was crying for this boy. Because my heart was breaking for him. And so I said, I was supposed to go. And the Lord said to me, he said, Lisa, when I tell you to go to someone, you go. That's all he said. And I was like, I disappointed God. And I'm like walking to my car, all disappointed. And so I'm getting into the car and I pull back the my seatbelt. So I turn this way. That kid was coming out of the door. Rob, I jumped out of the car. I mean, I didn't even say anything to my husband. I jumped out of the car and I ran to him. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I had no idea, but I ran to him and I started talking to him, and I didn't have any money to give him, but I told him that when he was crying at night, that God was with him. And I told him that God was with him and that he was going to take care of him. He was going to provide for him and that it was going to be okay. And that he wasn't alone and that his parents hadn't forsaken him, that because his parents were dead. And his parents were praying for him and just all these things. And he looks at me and he said, do I know you? And I said, no, you don't. And he said, and I said, I don't even know if you're a believer. And he reaches in and he pulls out a what's it called? Rosary beads. And he shows me his rosary beads. Wow. And but the love that I felt for him, that when I got home, I cried for 45 minutes. I just cried and cried and cried because of the love. And the Lord just like told me about how I don't have to love because he'll fill me with love.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
I've never shared that story. So
I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you shared your story that you never shared before. So I shared a new one that I never shared before, But I think that's the thing, is that if we can become vulnerable and if we can share the hard stuff and if we can go just unafraid, that if God says, go to that person and not have to worry, that he will fill our mouth with the proper words, right? Because you didn't even know what you were going to say, did you?
No.
You're like, no. And how do we love somebody that we don't know?
Yeah.
But he can fill us to overflowing. It's so good. It's so good. That's so good. We're past 9 o'clock. I'm so sorry. I just looked. Everybody seems to be like, oh, this is so cool. You have lots of people who just love you, Rob. They really, really do. So let me just ask you, what is your next book? Because the Lord's saying that you have another book that you're working on.
It's going to be a little different. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. I'll say this. I'm trying to do a, you and I talked before the show about taking the ideas that he's been working on with me for a long time: intimacy, identity, and intentionality. And those three I's have been in my head since the cancer days. And so how do you impart those to people? And what he's been giving me now is trying to guide people, instead of just doing it as a teaching course, doing it as kind of an interactive allegory, or like kind of like a Heinz feet, but that you're the one reading it, you're in the story, and you're going through this. And so it's been kind of something personal for people, like they're walking through the story. So that's what's next.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And there's also some other things that are on the back burner that we kind of talked about. And so
Yep.
If you guys are interested in getting in touch with Rob, you can actually go to your website, which is Rob Coscia, WordPress.com, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you guys can go there. You can also find him on Facebook. You can go to Amazon. You can go get your Kindle version of Wonderful, which is a devotional. Oh, see, he has his stuff with him. He has coffee and a book. Come on. And the sunglasses for those Blues Brothers.
Absolutely.
So this has been so much fun. I'd love to do this again.
Appreciate it so much. Oh, absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you
Absolutely. So much. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you reach out to Rob, send him a text, send him a message, tell him how much this has encouraged you. Get his books, especially 40 Doors. If you know somebody who's going through cancer, get them that book, because I am telling you, you need encouragement. You need to know that God is with you, and everybody needs to get a kiss on top of their head. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in to Touched by Prayer. Just remember to go out and touch someone. God bless and good night.